Like, I didn't know how to name the place. When we had to sign the lease, they were like, well, do you still want to put your skate park in Bay 198? And I was like, what's Bay 198? And they were like, well, Sears is Bay 200 and Radio Shack is Bay 199 and you're across the hall and you're 198. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. I was like, yeah, Bay 198. And they were like, well, what's the name of it going to be? And I was like, this is called Bay 198.
From Grindstone Media, this is Nebraska Made, a narrative journey through the lives of Nebraska's most inspiring business leaders. We unpack the intimate details of how our guests navigated obstacles and built their companies in pursuit of the good life. I'm JT Martin, and today we hear from Mike Smith, professional speaker, action sports personality, social entrepreneur, and the founder of The Bay, a 30,000 square foot nonprofit skate park for kids. Our guest today, Mike Smith, gave us 110% for this episode. And his energy is real. He's worked with youth his whole career, and he knows how to keep their attention. He runs 4 companies, has 100,000 Instagram followers, and when it's not COVID, he spends most of his year on the road as a motivational speaker, inspiring students to become better people. Mike Smith is on a mission, and it's all centered around helping Nebraska's youth.
I am from Lincoln, Nebraska, but my cell phone number is from Imperial, Nebraska, and that's an important distinction to make. I still got a 308 number, and it's like a pride. It's a sense of pride for me.
What were you like as a kid?
I heard something the other day that was so interesting. Someone said to me, they were like, I think the most true version of yourself is who you are when you're like 8 to 12. And I feel like as I've gotten older and as I've kind of like settled into me, I feel like I've just like become the adult version of the 8 to 12-year-old Mike. Like I'm the same kind of just like, I love to play. I loved to play then. I love freedom. I'm looking for that probably more than anything else in this world.
Were you sort of entrepreneurial as a kid, or were you just more about just goofing off with your friends?
I think the big shift for me was like we had this is maybe where the Bay kind of comes from, but like we had a really cool YMCA in our downtown in Rapid City, and as a kid, it was like 4 or 5 days a week for like 4 or 5 hours at a time. I was at the YMCA. Like I got kicked out of Boy Scouts as an 8-year-old for fighting or something like that. And so I got put into jujitsu, but it wasn't like, oh, I went to jujitsu like some people go to like dance class. It was like 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, traveling all over, fighting in tournaments. I probably have like 60 first place trophies scattered all over my like life of just like fighting in these tournaments as a kid. Cause like that's what the culture was. And so, but the YMCA and jiu-jitsu was cool and it was awesome to grow up in like a ring and fight. Like that part was fun, but like you had the whole YMCA. So it was like when you were done, it was like you could swim all day. There was a sweet arcade downstairs. Like you could play there and just run crazy because like that's where we grew up, you know? And so as a kid, I just remember like this one big building where it was like everything was on limits.
Did you like organized education, like formal education?
No, I hated it. I was terrible at it. They used to mail home your deficiency slips. Like, do you remember those days? Like, if you had a bad grade, did you ever get bad grades?
Oh, yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Cool. So, like, religious bad grades. So I knew the system. They would mail home these deficiency slips.
Okay.
So, like, I remember in the office seeing all of the deficiency slips laid out, being ready to be mailed out. And I was like, the mail in Imperial is as fast as that guy can walk. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, cool. So I went home and I got the key to our mailbox because they didn't deliver mail to your house. They delivered it to the post office. Went to our lockbox, went in and took the deficiency slips out, left the rest of the mail, went to practice, but I forgot to take the key home. So my dad shows up to practice and he's like, couldn't find the mailbox key. And I was just new. Was at practice. Like I'm like in practice, like doing dribbling drills. I look up and there's like, my dad who said 11 words my entire life, you know what I mean? And you're just like, oh man. And he's just like, where's the key? And you're just like, God, nobody knows. Oh yeah. And he was like, he's like, grade's pretty bad. What do you get? And like, what was coming in the mail? And it was just like, well, and then my coach was like, he's got 6 Ds or some crazy thing.
Did you go to college? Did you want to go to college?
I did. I wanted to play college basketball. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't get accepted to anywhere in Nebraska at first. So I went to this little school in Wyoming and got kicked out. And then I ended up at Grace University in Omaha, which also was not a great fit, but they had a basketball team. So I didn't ever look at college like I had a dream of playing somewhere for 4 years, or I wanted to graduate with a degree, or I needed a degree to do a career. Like I literally don't think I ever one time had any of those thoughts. I think the deepest thought I had was like, it'd be cool to play college basketball.
Yeah.
And then I figured I'd have a life working with kids, helping people. I wasn't 100% sure.
That's awesome.
Like where it would go, you know, but it was just like, that was what I was going to do.
So where did you land right after Grace? You're like, okay, I want to work with kids. What do I get into?
I just wrote this out the other day. I had like I had the audacity to do this, and this was so funny. I was 22 years old working at this. Have you ever heard of Campus Life? It's like a para-church after-school club thing, yeah. Right? And so the executive director of that organization quit, and he was like, you know, a professor, a master's degree. He went on to work at Boy Scouts, like Boy Scouts of America's like corporate office. Like he was like a legitimate like corpo nonprofit dude. Like he had paid his dues. And it's like the executive director job opens up, and I'm like, of course I'm getting this job. Like, why wouldn't they give me this job? There's like 10 people who work here, and they're all older than me and have all worked here longer. But I was like, I'm better than everyone at this job. Like, I literally said that at the meeting. I was like, I'm better than all of you at this. And I was like, and so I applied, clearly didn't get it. So I quit because I was like, I'm not going to have one of you tell me how to do something. I was like, no way.
So Mike learns a little humility and gets some real world youth work experience. He has this unshakable energy that makes him great with kids, and he's getting closer to finding the thing that he wants to dedicate his life to. But his big turning point came while working at a child service organization called Cedars that provides street-based assistance to runaway, homeless, and at-risk youth in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I mean, honestly, the biggest kind of pivot in my life, you have those big moments, you know? It was, I got a job at Cedars. Working at Cedars as like a outreach worker. So I was working it was a street out, SOS was the title. So it was Street Outreach Services was the department. I was the judge of teen court. And this sounds so silly, but because this is a Nebraska podcast, you know, and like any kid who's grew up in Lincoln is going to relate to this. But if you got an MIP, you know, if you're under 18 and you got MIP'd or whatever, or if you got like a possession ticket or a trespassing ticket or whatever it was, vandalism, you went to diversion and you got a diversion officer and you had to do community service hours, and they would, you know, you do enough community service hours and it's off your record or whatever. So the way that it worked at Cedars was I was the judge at teen court. And so I like would wear this stupid judge's robe in a legit fake courtroom, and the kids were the jurors. And all the jurors were kids who'd been busted. So if you got caught, you had to serve like 12 jury duties. So that was how we kept the jury stacked. You know what I mean? Like every Tuesday, and I never miss. Like, what else have I got going on? Teen court was the most interesting thing you'd ever heard of. Because you'd hear a story about kids doing crazy things, and then they'd be like in my fake courtroom 3 weeks later, and I'd be like, yo, this is that kid. I have no legitimate authority right now, but like everyone thinks I do. I'm like a street outreach worker at Cedars posing as the teen court judge. Yeah. I'm basically there just to make sure the wheels don't fall off. Is all it was, you know?
And did you have like long hair and tattoos back
dude,
then?
I've always looked like this. Yeah, I've looked like this since college. Like day one college has been long hair Mike. The tattoos is the only thing that's gotten. Well, I've never changed. So anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these kids for 2 years, dude. It's 2 years straight of just like, these kids are walking in and I'm listening. I'm like, these aren't bad kids. They're just bored kids. Like this is Lincoln, Nebraska, bored to death. They've grown up here their whole life. So they go get in trouble. And I was like, I did the same thing. Like I just was either faster than you, smarter than you, outsmarted the cops that one time. Like a different friend got caught that night, not me. Like that is the only difference, was like I played roulette and got away with it in my little town and you didn't in Lincoln. And it's like, so I'm looking at these kids and I'm like, these kids are just good kids, you know? And like they're getting community service hours and they got to go do stuff. And I was like, they need a place to go. Like nobody has a place to go. And I was like, that's me. And like, I don't know if it's like rewind all the way back to YMCA Mike, who's like, oh my God, I know how big this is as a kid, but I would have never articulated this like I can now in 2010. Like in 2010 when this happened, no, 2009, I would have never been able to say this, you know, but like I just knew kids needed a place to go and I couldn't drop it. Like physically couldn't drop it. Like I'm going to create a place to go. And it wasn't like and you're going to help and you're going to help and you're going to help. It was like, you're either on this train with me or I'm running you over and you're not on this train anymore ever again. But like, I'm going to do this. Like board of directors meetings, like mid-Bay when it was like looking bleak, I had a moment where I was like, oh, you guys don't understand what's happening here. I was like, you can all quit. And I was like, I'll start another 501c3 and do this again next week. I was like, I'm never going to stop. I had to start so differently because I was 27, no college degree, no money. I was making $1,800 a month as an SOS worker at Cedars. I had no materials, no lumber, no background, no history in this, and no help, honestly. And I was like, I got this, dude. I got this. And it was like, I got all the lumber donated from Back to the Bible, like all the ramps and everything that were there. I was like, they were like, we'll leave it here as long as you need it. So I was like picking and choosing what I needed when I needed it from there. Everything, glass display cases, cash registers, speakers, sound system, like all of it. I would take like some ramps, coping, pads to wrap like banners so kids wouldn't skate into it and hit, like scrappy, just metal pieces off of the floor that I could patch other things with. Like total anthill status, dude. Like building it like a shack is what it felt like I was doing. Like, and then I scrapped that all together. We got an abandoned barn, tore it all apart in another barn, like in the dark. We would turn our trucks on with our lights at night and then like and just like take these ramps apart, just like, and then save every freaking screw that you didn't strip the head off of. And we had a bucket of strip screws and a bucket of good screws, and the good screws we took back in. And I was like, I had no money and no idea what I was doing, but I knew that I was like, if you generate $2, $3, $4, $5,000 a month, you can do this, right? Like if you can just figure out a way to generate / raise that.
So Mike has a few old skate ramps and a vision. He asks his friends' fathers to be on the board of directors, and he starts raising money. His guerrilla fundraising tactics include skating across Nebraska, Scottsbluff to the capital 3 times, or sleeping under a bridge for 27 days. And eventually he gathers enough resources to establish his first skate park location at the Gateway Mall. After pulling all the strings possible to piece things together, Mike was ready for the grand opening on November 6, 2010. But there was one attendee at the grand opening that wasn't there to skate.
Like we opened November 6th of 2010. So our 10 year was just like this month. So we've been 10 years. Thank you. The photo that you see of it, the one photo that we have or whatever, the sign, the thing that everyone won't understand is at our grand opening, I had been dodging the sign guy that I owed $800 for like 2 weeks. So he knew I was going to be at the grand opening. Do you know what I'm saying? Like clearly this guy knows that day to find me. And I had been dodging. Oh, of course, dude. Waited in line with the kids, bro. The sign guy, he was like, congrats on the opening. And I was like, there's a lot of cash in here. I was like, I'm going to pay you cash at the end of the day. And he was like, sounds great. And I was like, come back at the end of the day. And it was just like, mother of God. And I was like, it has begun. Like, this is how it works. Like your first 800 you make is already accounted for. And you're just like, and that has been the Bay ever since, man. It was just like a scrappiest start. Like I didn't know how to name the place. Everybody always asked where the name came from. It was Bay 198. When we had to sign the lease for the thing, they were like, well, do you still want to put your skate park in Bay 198? And I was like, what's Bay 198? And they were like, well, Sears is Bay 200 and Radio Shack is Bay 199 and you're across the hall and you're 198. And it's like, and they showed me how it was like odds on this side, evens on this side. And it was like 198, 196. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. I was like, yeah, Bay 198. And they were like, well, what's the name of it going to be? And I was like, and there was already a sign on the back of the door that said Bay 198. And I was like, let's just leave this sign. Let's just call it Bay 198. I was like, let's just call it that. I was like, everybody just call it Bay anyway. And
don't got to make a new sign.
I didn't even do anything. Yeah, I just had to not pay that one guy for a while, you know? And then we're good. But yeah, dude, Bay 198, that's where it came from.
So the Bay is officially born, and they quickly outgrow their space in the mall. So that's when they moved into their current location, a 30,000 square foot warehouse at 20th and Y Street in Lincoln. At this time, Mike is still working as a social worker, and the Bay needed more funding, so they start looking for new revenue streams, and they decide to tap into Mike's God-given gift for public speaking. Their plan? To make a video series that encourages kids to live better lives, and then leverage that series to then create a national school assembly speaking tour. They call the video series The Harbor, and the speaking tour, Mike Smith Live.
The thing that worked that was so funny is schools need resources and they have like the worst because nobody's trying to make cool videos. Who's intentionally like passionately like, I'm going to go make dope content for high schools to watch in school. Like I was battling Bill Nye and he'd already retired. Yeah. So I recorded a DVD, swear to God, DVD, had a friend burn, like he had like access to a mass DVD burner. So he burned like 300 of them. I had kids who had community service hours that they needed to do, hand write and hand label all of these. I got recycled like disc cases, like little, like they were like, looked like a CD would come in it, right? I slid, like the DVD was like a custom thing. It was called Branded. And it was a 5-minute free video. And I mailed 300 DVDs to schools within like an 8-hour drive of Lincoln, like all of the schools, you know what I mean? That I could possibly get these kids that had community service hours to find the address to. Yeah. And then I was like, after you get the address, you need to go to their website and find their mascot. And you need to put like hashtag Go Panthers or something at the bottom of every single one of these. And so I had this like assembly line of kids, like hand writing these things, just pumped out 300 of these things. Dude, it was like wildfire. It was just like, and that was what it took. And then it was just like, schools were like, hey, we got this video. Like, do you speak at schools? And I was like, absolutely, I do. But that was how it started, was I just like shipped out a bunch of DVDs because it was like a $300 idea, you know, like to print the DVDs, to get the recycled stuff and to put stamps on it or whatever. It wasn't like it cost me a ton. You know, it was just painstaking, painful time. But I treated it like a job when I first started speaking, just because I needed the resources to pay for the Bay. That was just like the line, you know? And so, but yeah, I treated it like a job. I would wake up at 6 o'clock East Coast time, and I would email every single school's email I could find, every principal I could possibly find. I would just cold email their inbox, and I would start on the East Coast, and I would just work my way all the way across the country until I just got sick of it. And I would do that every week, a couple days a week. And then the next week I would go see if any, whoever had followed up, I would just reply back to them that next day. And I just kept that train going. And it was I probably got 3 assemblies off that, from New York to San Diego, got 3. One of those ended up being $2,000 in Chicago. I got a new website, paid for the DVDs. And it was after that, it was exploded. There's the movie in your head that you're playing out that no one will ever know all of the scenes to. Do you know what I mean? And I know some of the gnarliest moments, some of the most desperate, no money, negative money, owe people money, you know what I mean? Moments where it's rough, you know, and scary moments of your organization where you kind of gut it out and it feels very like a hero's journey on your own. And those were very real. I remember the first time I got $750 to speak one time. And I was oh, sweet. Okay. I was it was $400 in gas or whatever. I was the gas, the rental car, the thing. And I was so you talked for 4 hours. And I was you're going to make $400. I was you made $100 an hour when this is said and done. You know, I still hadn't paid taxes or any of that yet in my mind, because you don't know how, but you're $100 an hour. And I was I only make $1,800 a month as a social worker. I was I bet if I do this 3 or 4 times a month and then just focused on the skate park, I'd be good. So that was the start. You know, it was get a couple bookings a month. You make $1,800 as a month. Could you make $2,000 as a speaker? So my original goal was is it possible to make $3,000 a month as a youth speaker? Within 8 months, I had to hire a full-time manager because I couldn't book my own travel anymore, because it was I was
too much.
Oh, it was out of control.
Wow. Did you have a moment when you were okay, we made it? This is a thing.
We're kind of smack dab in the middle of, I think, the we made it moments right now. You know, crawl, walk, run, sprint, that analogy. You guys ever use that around here when you're in something? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It gets tossed around a lot in our world, and I feel we're sprinting, but in reality, in the 30,000 foot bird's eye view of this thing, the Bay is just now starting to learn how to walk. We're getting out of our infancy stages, and most nonprofits don't make it 10 years, you know? Most nonprofits don't make it to a place where you can apply for federal funding, and we just got to that point. A decade in, and we just are now responsible and grown up enough to apply for federal funding. And that's nothing to do with me, everything to do with our development team, who's knows how to even make that possible. We didn't have some big federal grant that we got or some sustainable funding. We don't get $500,000 a year every year committed from some big foundation in town. No way. No way. You know what I mean? And so it's we don't get grants of over $100,000 hardly ever. There's probably been 5 total in the history of the Bay. You know what I mean?
Wow,
and so
yeah.
it isn't that. It's your 25,000s, your 10,000s, your 15,000s, your 30,000s at a time. And it takes a ton of those because we have $1 million budget.
What do you think about starting the Bay in Nebraska specifically?
Yeah.
Do you think has helped for its growth?
Best decision of my life. I did it on purpose. I love Nebraska so much. Dude, Nebraska is everything to me. I got it tatted on my wrist. I point to it all day long. My friends don't understand it. Sometimes my wife and I could live wherever we wanted. We could do that because we have freedom, and I have a job that I can do remote, you know, and all that stuff. But it's no way. You could sit here and be Lincoln's the greatest town ever. And no, it's got its problems like any town. When we have a diversity issue, just like most Midwest towns, but what a solvable problem. I love Nebraska so much, and I'm here, baby. And this is my place. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. This is Nebraska's going to have to kick me out.
Today, Mike has appeared in Forbes magazine and BuzzFeed, and he continues to look for opportunities to help others. For example, his collaboration with Yeah Nice Beanies that donates a beanie to a homeless shelter for every single purchase. Mike Smith Live has grossed over $1 million in a single year in revenue, and you can bet that it's all going back into the Bay to reach more kids and help break generational poverty in Nebraska. I'm JT Martin, and this has been a Grindstone production. Grindstone is one of the premier production and marketing firms here in Lincoln, offering everything you need to grow your business in 2020, from video and podcast production to social media management and media buying. You can learn more by visiting grindstoneagency.com.
Do you know what the Enneagram is?
Yes, my mom's obsessed with the Enneagram.
Okay, so you can tell your mom that you met a 7 wing 7.
That's the most hype Enneagram that you can be.
Yeah. And then there's no wing. My wing isn't to do the other thing. My wing is just to stay hype.